Hi everybody, my name is Justin Stoney and I'm the founder of New York Vocal Coaching here in New York City. Welcome to episode 26 of Voice Lessons to the World, the show where we want to help you guys as singers by answering your questions from all over, and I'll give you a chance to ask questions later. But our question for this week comes from Randall O. in Orlando, Florida. And Randall writes, Dear Justin, I have the baritone curse. All my favorite singers are tenors that sing pop rock and R&B, but I'm a baritone. Am I doomed with the baritone curse, or will I ever be able to sing high? Now, that's a great question, Randall, and thank you so much for writing. And that's very funny, the baritone curse. I like the way you say that. And today we're going to talk about this curse that you describe and see if we can dispel some of that and give you some ideas and some options so that you don't feel doomed and cursed for the rest of your life. So let's dive right in. The baritone curse. I think I know what you mean by that, Randall, but I'm gonna just talk us through that. First of all, a baritone. A lot of people think that that's somebody, with a low voice, and it could be. It is. However, just know, Randall and all, I haven't heard you, Randall, but a low speaking voice does not necessarily mean that you're a baritone. So if you have a low voice, if you have a low baritone speaking voice, that doesn't mean that you're a baritone. There's plenty of guys with a low speaking voice who are actually tenors and actually have a great high range. And there's also baritones and basses that don't actually speak all that low. A lot of times it does cross over, but not necessarily. So you may indeed have a low speaking voice and not be a baritone. That's one thing to keep in mind. Another thing is, a lot of people have been told that they're baritones. Maybe you've sung in choir in the past and you were put in the baritone section. And that could have been due to blend, but then you start to think to yourself, well, I'm a baritone, and you identify with that. You identify with low notes and with singing low, and you think of your voice as low. Voice teachers as well often classify their singers as baritones and have them singing low repertoire and singing low and middle notes all the time. Just because somebody has told you you're a baritone in the past doesn't necessarily mean that you are. Personally, growing up, I always sang baritone in choir. I was trained as a singer as a baritone, and I found out later that I was actually a tenor and had a real easy time getting up to high notes, but all growing up and all through my teenage years and even early 20s, I really didn't have a tenor range, but I found out later that I was a tenor. So just because people have told you that you're a baritone, that also doesn't mean that you're cursed to be a baritone. The next thing is, just because you have trouble with high notes doesn't mean you're a baritone. A lot of people say, well, I just can't hit those high notes, I must be a baritone. Even voice teachers will say, well, you're not really getting up to these notes and you're kind of strained up here, I bet you're a baritone. Just keep in mind that a struggle with high notes doesn't just mean that you're a baritone. It's probably some sort of issue with your registration or an issue with your vocal mechanics. It is something that can be changed, and so struggle with high notes does not equal baritone. Next, opera versus contemporary music. Keep in mind, there's a lot of different voice types that classical singers classify. You could be a lyric baritone, you could be a basso profundo, you could be a dramatic tenor or a lyric tenor. There's a lot of categories that really do matter for operatic music. When you're on an operatic stage and you need to project over an orchestra, your voice type actually has a lot of meaning. But in contemporary music and pop, and especially microphone singing, those distinctions are really not important. And it sounds like, Randall, you want to sing more pop rock and R&B. So perhaps you've had some classical training, and maybe in the classical setting, you might be a baritone. But somebody who's a baritone on an operatic stage could indeed sing high in a pop setting. There's a lot of reasons why that's true, but just know that a classical singer's distinction is not necessarily going to be something that crosses over to contemporary and microphone singing. Also, baritones sometimes are just guys who have used their chest voice exclusively. They only know how to sing in chest, or maybe just falsetto and chest voice, but they haven't developed a lot of different registers. They just sing one way all the time, and that way tends to be chest voice. Doesn't matter if you're a tenor or a baritone. If you're only singing in chest voice, you're going to be something like a baritone, no matter what your voice type is. So those are the categories that I'm going to call elements to having the baritone curse. So I hope that makes sense for you, Randall, and maybe you can identify with some of those, and baritones out there, maybe you can identify with some of those. But now let's talk about breaking the curse. If you are cursed as a baritone, here are some ideas for how you can maybe get through that. First of all, like I say, within pop music, everybody's a tenor. Okay, so again, voice types are real. What you've got is what you've got. But within pop music, everybody can make sounds that are something like what a tenor would make, an authentic, high, chesty sounding note. That can be done regardless of voice range. I know very, very low basses and baritones who naturally would be basses and baritones, especially in a classical setting, who can sing with a really high extension that works great for pop rock, even for musical theater as well. The key to this, though, is going to be developing a good mix. And you might need a good voice teacher in your area to help you to do this, but developing a mix is finding a registration that's between chest voice and your falsetto or head voice. There are ways to blend those two things that will take the weight out of your strong chest voice and allow you to extend your range higher and higher in a healthy way and in a way that sounds, like I say, strong. It's not chest voice, but it will sound like chest voice. So even the lowest singers, when they develop a great mix and a great head voice, will be able to sing like a tenor really, really high, especially within the context of contemporary music. Now, another tip for breaking that curse, I've said this in the past, don't neglect your falsetto. Don't neglect your head voice. That's not probably the mix you're looking for, Randall, but you can't neglect the high stuff and expect to get the mix. You got to get way up there in falsetto. You got to do your trills. You got to do your breath support exercises. You have to do your things like we've talked about with filters in the past, things that facilitate your flexibility. You've got to have a lot of that kind of work, not just strength work, if you want to get up into the mix and if you want to be something like a tenor, or you want to discover that you really, really are a tenor and have been a tenor all along. Another thing is, don't sing your middle voice too loudly or too fully. If you're pushing your chest voice through your middle, if you're getting too loud, if you're getting too strong, if you're getting too chesty, right through your middle and upper middle voice, you're probably not going to have the high notes. Your voice is getting too strong right there in the middle, and it won't be able to hang on to all that weight, and it's going to block you from being whatever tenor you have wanted to be. Next is make sure that you use nasal resonance, some in your sound going through that middle and upper middle voice. If you wait until you get to your high notes to use your upper resonators, you're never going to get to the high notes. You need to bring those down into your middle too. That's one tip I can give you right now about how to get that mix to go higher and how to access those high notes. Don't neglect that nasal resonance. And then also, baritones are used to singing and speaking, like I say, pretty full and pretty thick. But one of the vocal cord coordinations that is going to be necessary for you to get up into the tenor range is allowing your voice to be a little bit more wussy and sometimes a little bit more breathy. You need to have these coordinations too. The opposite of baritone land is something like this. And while you won't sing that way all the time, if you aren't experimenting as a pop singer with some of the lighter and breathier sounds, you're not also going to be able to have an easier time up in those tenor notes. So allow for wussiness, allow for breathiness as one of your coordinations. Now next, I just want to say this, Randall, and all who suffer from a baritone curse, being a baritone's not so bad. I mean, come on. The world needs more baritones, right? Everybody's singing high these days. So, Randall, I know you want to be a tenor, and probably so many guys out there watching this, you want to be a tenor, but maybe being a baritone's not such a bad thing after all. You can cultivate your low register, your middle register. You can have a strong chest voice and a nice, rich baritone sound. That might not be the worst thing. If you have a glorious baritone voice, and it's a true baritone voice, it doesn't love to get up to the high notes, you might just be better off, honestly, not being afraid of who you are and cultivating that sound, something a little bit lower than we're used to hearing. When everybody's doing it one way, it's okay to do it another way. You might be better off not trying to just hit high notes all the time. Everybody's singing high notes. Not everybody has to just be singing high notes all day. Honestly, it gets a little tiring for the ear in pop music these days, don't you think? When everybody's just belting high all the time, it'd be nice actually to have a few more true baritones out there in the pop rock R&B world, singing a little bit more mellow, a little bit more rich and deep. It's not such a bad thing. So listen, if you want high notes, there's definitely ways to get them. If you want to be a tenor in pop rock music, know that it's not just something that's impossible. You can absolutely do it. But also, don't be afraid to be a baritone. It's not such a bad thing. So whether you decide to break the curse or not is up to you, but know it can be broken, but also know it's not so bad to be a baritone. So I hope that's been helpful for you guys today as singers. If you have questions that you'd like to see us answer on the show, you can send an email to questions@voicelessonstotheworld.com. And we just encourage you not to lose that joy. Don't lose that passion. Don't let anybody curse your voice, not yourself, not anybody else. Know that you can break whatever curse and move ahead with your voice if you practice and if you find a great voice teacher in your area. If you guys are in New York City, you can check us out at www.newyorkvocalcoaching.com. And if you like these videos, you can visit www.voicelessonstotheworld.com. I'm Justin Stoney. We'll see you next time.